Good morning. Welcome to the Daily Tanya. Today is Friday, the 12th day of Shevat. And today we're going to give the shir for both for yesterday that we missed. Yesterday we started chapter 23 in Tanya. And we're going to start, so we're going to give both. We're going to start the beginning of chapter 23. Yesterday of the 11th day of Shevat, we begin with tzedakah. Once again, Gedei tzedakah shemekareves es hageula. So, in chapter 23, the Alter Rebbe begins explaining, after what we explained in the previous chapters about the oneness of God, the unity of God, nothing exists outside of God, and so on. And what it means, idolatry. That idolatry is not just taking an idol and worshiping, but also anything that feels itself self-existing. Arrogance is also a form of idolatry, because when you feel that you're a self-made man, you're denying God. You're not denying that everything is Hashem. So this the Alter Rebbe spoke about the side of understanding the oneness of God, and now the Alter Rebbe goes to explain how this is implemented through the studying of Torah and doing the mitzvahs, the connecting to God, through the studying of Torah and doing the mitzvahs. And why is that? So, as we explained, that the inner will of Hashem is a Jew doing a mitzvah, a Jew studying Torah. That is the ultimate will. As we explained, we gave the analogy when you want to accomplish something, you want to build a house, let's say. You have to build a house, you need a lot of material, you need to apply for permits, and you need to hire plumbers and electricians, all kind of things. You go to a construction site and you see so many things. It looks like a mess. So many things happening there. And you ask the person who builds the house, is this what you want? They say, of course, but that's what I want, to build a house. But is really this what you want? You want the trucks and the sand and the bricks and everything? No, that's not what I want. I have the ultimate will that I want a home. I want a beautiful home. Hashem wants a beautiful home right here in this world. Meaning that there would be a person, a human being, that is in the lower world, that does not sense God, and he brings godliness in this world. He or she. That is the ultimate will of Hashem. When this will of Hashem becomes fulfilled, everything else that leads to it is also becoming fulfilled. Meaning, you have all of the workers and all of the employees, everything that leads to the ultimate purpose, which is building the will of Hashem, building the home for Hashem. And that is the way you connect to Hashem, is by fulfilling and bringing down the ultimate inner will of Hashem into this world. Now, when you're talking about the will of Hashem into this world being fulfilled, you have the path of the mitzvahs and the path of studying Torah. Those are two separate ways of how to connect to Hashem. And he quotes a Zohar that says that the 248 organs, 248 mitzvahs are the 248 organs of Hashem. And that is regarding the mitzvahs. Regarding the Torah, it says, that the Torah and God is one. And the Rebbe explains that the mitzvah, the connection that a Jew performs a connection that the Jew creates by performing a mitzvah, connection with Hashem is like an organ. What is an organ? An organ is, we have 248 organs. An organ is something that expresses the soul. An eye sees, your hand move automatically when the soul decides it wants to move, wants to do something. That is when you do a mitzvah, you're acting as an organ. It doesn't have a separate desire, separate will. It just acts automatically what Hashem wants. You become like that organ. But still, the organ is not one with the person himself. But when it comes to the Torah, is even a greater. Studying the Torah is even a greater form of unity, because when you study the Torah, you're actually studying God's wisdom. You're studying God's wisdom. Because the wisdom that you understand is the wisdom of Hashem. The Torah and God is one. As we explained, so let's see inside. We're going to understand a little better when we learn it inside. Says the Alter Rebbe, V'him kol aniska la'el. After everything explained before, Yuvan v'yevuar hitev b'toisefes biur, masha omru b'zoyar de'iraisa v'kutsh b'richa kol echad. In light of all that has been said above, we can better understand and more fully and clearly elucidate the statement of the Zohar that the Torah and God are entirely one. And the commentary in the Tikkunei Zohar that the 248 commandments are the 248 organs of the divine King, of Hashem. And he explains Mitzvos and Pnimius because the mitzvahs constitute God's innermost will and his true desire. Everything else is only to get to the true will. The entire world, everything that exists, is in order to get to the true will. And that true will which is clothed in all the upper and lower worlds, thereby giving them life. So they're getting life, all of the spiritual worlds and the physical worlds. They're getting life. How? Because there is a true will running through them that needs to be fulfilled ultimately. And for that true will to be fulfilled, everything else serves as tools to help that will to be fulfilled. So when you go on a plane and you travel to a location to give a Torah class, you have everything else, everything that is involved. The people who build the plane, the people who serve the plane, the people of the food, and all of this becomes part of fulfilling the true will when you do the mitzvah. So when you did the mitzvah, you made a bracha. Whatever mitzvah you do, you bring about everything that leads both in this physical world and the spiritual world. And it says, because the very life and sustenance of all of the worlds is dependent upon the performance of the mitzvahs by the creatures of the lower worlds. As is known, that performing a mitzvah draws godly life and sustenance into all the worlds. So all the malachim, all the angels are waiting for us to do a mitzvah. When we do a mitzvah, we bring down life to them as well. It's like when you have a business and things goes well in the business, then everybody benefits. There's bonuses, there's people, the employees, everybody benefits. It follows that the performance and fulfillment of the mitzvahs is the innermost garment for the innermost aspect of God's will. Since it is due to this performance of the mitzvahs that the light and life of the world issued forth from the divine will to be clothed in them. Hence, the mitzvahs are figuratively described as organs of the king. Because just as the organs of a human being, the organs of the human body are a garment for its soul and are completely and utterly surrendered to it. your hand is surrendered to your soul. Why? Because as evident from the fact that as soon as a person desires to stretch out his hand or foot, they obey his will immediately, without any command or instruction to them, and with no delay whatsoever. You want to pick up your foot and go, you pick up your foot and go. And the foot listens right away. If it doesn't listen right away, you got to see a doctor. Hello. But at the very instant that it entered his will to do so right away, it listens. Same thing as the mitzvahs. So just as the organs of the body, of a human body, are completely united with one's soul and are surrendered to it, so too is the life force animating the performance or fulfillment of the commandments completely surrendered to the divine will, which is clothed therein. And this life force becomes, in relation to the divine will, like a body to a soul. The divine will, the will becomes united to Hashem like a body to a soul, which is really, really united. The same thing that the Rebbe says. Likewise, the external garment of the divine soul of the person fulfilling and practicing the commandment, meaning its faculty of action is external compared to the faculties of speech and thought. Action is an external garment. Speech and thought is more within the person himself, since it functions outside of oneself. So this is also who mislabesh b'chayus shel ma'aseh mitzvah v'naseh gam ken kiguf l'neshama l'rotzen elyon abot leila v'gamri. So this action also clothes itself in the vitality of the performance of the mitzvah, and thus it too becomes like a body to a soul in relation to the divine will, and is completely surrendered to the divine will. You're doing a mitzvah, you're doing Hashem's will. Ve'al kain, and therefore, gam every guf odem ha'mekayim ha'mitzvah, it is in this way, those organs of the human body which perform the mitzvah, they become also like a body and a soul connected to Hashem. Meaning that those organs in which the divine soul's faculty of action is closed during the performance of the mitzvah, the performance and fulfillment of the mitzvah, they too become a veritable vehicle, merkava, a chariot for the divine will. For example, in the hand which distributes charity to the poor or performs another commandment becomes, in the act of performing a mitzvah, a chariot for the divine will. Like a chariot that goes where the rider wants it to go. It doesn't have its own will. The same thing that your hand becomes a chariot for Hashem. Similarly, the feet which walk for the purpose of fulfilling a mitzvah, or the mouth and tongue which speak the words of Torah, and the brain reflecting in the Torah, or the fear of heaven, or the greatness of God, blessed be He. Your brain you can use your brain to doing many things. But when you choose to use your brain to think words of Torah, or think of Yiras Shamayim, the greatness of Hashem, the awe of Hashem, fear of Hashem, the greatness of Hashem, that moment, your brain becomes a vehicle to Hashem. This is what the sages meant when they said that the patriarchs are truly the divine chariot. The patriarchs are truly the divine chariot because they were completely, the entire life they were nullified to Hashem. שכל עבריהם כולם היו קדושים ומובדלים בענייני עולם הזה, ולא נעשה מרכבה רק לרצון העליון לבד כל ימיהם. For all their organs were completely holy and detached from mundane matters. And throughout their lives, they served as a vehicle for nothing but the divine will. And now we continue today's share, which is Friday, the 12th day of Shevat. So now, after explaining about what happens, the unity that happens through doing the mitzvahs, Alter Rebbe goes on to explain that there is even a greater unity that is achieved through studying the Torah. Because by studying the Torah, you're not only becoming a vehicle to Hashem's will, doing what Hashem wants, like an organ carries out the will of the soul. But when you study the Torah, you are understanding the wisdom of Hashem Himself. So your mind becomes one with Hashem's mind. The Torah is one with Hashem because by God, Him and His wisdom, His intellect, so to speak, are one. They're not like two separate entities, as we explained in chapter 2. Continues Alter Rebbe, but the thought and the meditation on the words of Torah, which is accomplished in the brain, and the power of speech engaged in the words of Torah, which is the mouth and being the innermost garments of the divine soul, and thus closer to the soul itself than the faculty of action, the external garment. As we said, these are three garments. There is the thoughts, the speech, and the action. The action is more considered more of a external garment. The thoughts and speech are more internal garments. And surely the divine soul itself, which is clothed in them, in the thought and speech engaged in the Torah study, all of them are fused in perfect unity with the divine will and are not merely a vehicle, a chariot. A chariot is doing the will of its rider, but it's still a separate entity. But when you study the Torah, you study God's wisdom itself. Why? Because the divine will is identical with the halachic subject of which one thinks and speaks. Inasmuch as all the laws of the halacha are particular expressions of the innermost divine will itself. Because when you study the will of Hashem, you study the Torah, study the will of Hashem. That's Hashem's desire. That's Hashem's will. That if this happens, there are cases like this, and you study this, you understand this, you become one with God's wisdom. For God's will it thus. That's what Hashem wanted, that a particular thing be deemed permissible or kosher, or that this person be found exempt and another innocent, or the reverse. Similarly, all the letters combination of the Tanakh, we have the Tanakh, the Torah, the prophets, and the writings. They're also expressions of God's will. The letter combinations, as we explained when we studied the Shah Yichud Ve'emunah, explained about the creation of the world through the combination of the letters. So in the Torah, the combination of the letters are an expression of God's will and wisdom, which are united with the Ein Sof in a perfect unity. Shehu Yedeya v'hu Amada Chulu, because he is the knower and he is the knowledge and the subject known. As we just said in chapter 2, the Alter Rebbe brings quotes from the Rambam, the Maimonides, that explains that Hashem, it's unlike human. The human has the person has an intellect, and the intellect, you use the intellect to understand the subject. But God understands the subject not by doing, he is the subject, that's why he understands the subject. It's all within himself. And it says, the Rambam says, the Maimonides says that this is beyond human understanding. We cannot understand, we cannot grasp such a concept. But this is the fact. This is what it means. It is meant by the statement that the Torah and God are absolutely one. They are not merely organs of the king, as are the mitzvahs. When you do a mitzvah, you're acting godly, and you're doing with Hashem's will, but you are acting godly. But when you study the Torah, your mind becomes one with Hashem's mind. Now, since a divine will, which is in perfect unity with God himself, this stands completely revealed in the divine soul, and in its inner garments, meaning the thoughts and speech. When a person is occupies himself with Torah study, is completely united, and there is nothing obscuring the divine will at that time. And in those moments when a person is studying the Torah, there is no obscuring. He's studying God's will himself. It follows that at that time the soul and these garments of the thought, speech are also truly united with Hashem. And with such a unity completely that is comparable to that of God's speech and thought with his essence and being as explained above. But nothing is separated from Hashem except insofar as his countenance is concealed. Only then can created beings perceive themselves as distinct entities. As explained in chapter 22, that only when there is a concealment, that's when they can perceive themselves as separate entities. Since there is no such concealment, when one studies Torah, one attains thereby a perfect unity with God, and unity comparable to that of God's speech and thought with himself prior to the revelation as speech and thought, but as they are contained within himself. As we learned in the earlier chapters, that speech is originated in the power of speech, which is originated in the emotions and originated in the brain, and ultimately in the will of the person, the essence of the person. And similarly, when we're talking about the speech of Hashem, so the Torah study is the way the speech is connected with the essence of Hashem himself, and that's how you become connected. Not only that, says the Alter Rebbe. You see, the Alter Rebbe says that when you study the Torah, you become united with Hashem in a way that is even greater than the holiness of the spiritual worlds. mentioned many times, is the spiritual world, that the godliness is revealed. And we ask, where would you have God more revealed, here or there? I mean, here we see a physical world. We don't see God, and yet, when you study Torah, the godliness that is drawn and united here is greater than the greatest, holiest angels and in the spiritual worlds. Why? Because that is the ultimate will of Hashem. So although we don't feel it, the fact is that this is the case. Godliness is revealed here. That's why it says when an angel comes in a room with 10 Jews, the angel is not able to sustain the great godly revelation that is there. The angel will disappear. That's what the Alter Rebbe once said. And we don't see it. We don't feel it. And it's good that we don't feel it. Why? Because if we would, we wouldn't be able to sustain this. But the fact is that we carry within us that great godliness when we do the Torah, the mitzvah, and when we study the Torah. That's what Alter Rebbe says. Moreover, their unity, meaning the unity of the divine soul and its faculties with God, that is attained through Torah study, is even more exalted and more powerful than the unity of God's infinite light with the upper spiritual worlds. For the divine will is actually manifest in the soul and its garment that are engaged in Torah study, since it is identical with the Torah being studied. All the supernal worlds receive their vitality by way of the light and life derived from the Torah, which is God's will and wisdom, as it is written, you have made them all with wisdom. Thus, it follows that God's wisdom, meaning the Torah, transcend them all. It's all above it, the greater. In fact, the Torah, God's will, is described as encompassing all the world, meaning that it is at a level that cannot become clothed within the world, but rather animates it and illuminates them in a transcending and encompassing manner. And it is this level which transcends all the worlds that is clothed in a truly revealed form in one's soul and his soul garments when he studies Torah. That's what happened when you study Torah. And as we just said, that even though you don't see it, but that doesn't make it that it's not the case. This is the case. Even though he does not see it, meaning when one studies Torah, he's unable to consciously experience the unity of his soul with God, which is attained thereby. Yet, it says, his soul feels it. In fact, this is precisely why he can endure such a unity with God. Precisely because he cannot feel it, that's why he is able to endure it. Unlike the supernal worlds, in the higher worlds, they feel their revealed connection with Hashem. So, but because they feel it, that is why when the connection, when the light is too intense, they cannot sustain it. So this is the end of today's shir. And we shall continue B'ezrat Hashem on Sunday, wishing you a wonderful Shabbos. Shabbos Shira, Shabbos of the song, special Shabbos. And we'll see you on Sunday B'ezrat Hashem.